the summer of 1944, somewhere in the hills of central Italy, a German infantry sergeant named Schreiber. His account was gathered post-war, translated, and preserved in a collection of first-hand testimonies, described what it was like to fight against American infantry for the first time. He had expected, he said, a certain cadence to the fire. Every soldier of his generation had internalized the rhythm of the bolt action, the single shot, the pause while the man cycled the action, the moment between rounds during which the target could move. The Germans had built their small unit tactics around that pause. Everyone had. What Schreiber described encountering instead was a different sound entirely. Not the pause, no pause. Shot after shot from a single American rifleman at a rate that did not correspond to the rhythm his experience had taught him to expect. He said he had initially assumed he was facing a machine gun team or an automatic weapon. He was facing one man with a rifle. The rifle was the M1 Garand. John Garand, a Canadian-born engineer working at the Springfield Armory in Massachusetts, had spent the 1920s and 1930s working on a problem that every major military in the world knew existed, but could not solve to anyone's satisfaction: how to give an infantryman more rounds per minute without requiring him to consciously operate a loading mechanism. Every second a soldier spends cycling a bolt is a second he is not shooting, not watching the field, not adjusting his position. Garand's answer, sir, an 8-round en bloc clip that fed automatically with the bolt cycling by gas pressure from each fired round, was adopted by the U.S. Army as the standard service rifle in 1936. It was the first semi-automatic rifle ever issued as the standard infantry weapon of any military in the world. No other major power in 1940 had a semi-automatic rifle as their frontline infantry standard. Germany had the Karabiner 98K, a bolt action. Japan had the Type 38 and Type 99 Arisaka, both bolt actions. The Soviet Union used the Mosin Nagant, a bolt action. Britain used the Lee Enfield, a bolt action. The M1 was the exception to the global rule of infantry armament, and every infantryman who went up against it in combat learned the difference immediately. General George Patton called the M1 the greatest battle implement ever devised. This was not hyperbole. This was the assessment of a man who had seen what it did in the field. The arithmetic of it was straightforward and brutal. An experienced rifleman with a bolt action could fire roughly 15 aimed rounds per minute under optimal conditions, more with great training and high stress and optimal conditions, which battle conditions are not. A soldier with an M1 Garand could fire 40 to 50 aimed rounds per minute. A squad of 10 American infantrymen with M1s had the effective firepower of something like 25 to 30 bolt-action riflemen. The tactical consequence of that ratio, played out across every infantry engagement from North Africa to Okinawa, was not subtle. Production numbers behind tactical reality are where the Allied industrial machine becomes the story. American factories built approximately 5.4 million M1 Garands during the Second World War. Production at its peak in January 1944 reached 122.01 rifles in a single month, 3,036 rifles per day, 164 rifles every hour around the clock. Springfield Armory and Winchester together accounted for roughly 4,040,802 of the total. Other manufacturers, International Harvester, Harrington and Richardson, added the rest. The German military understood what the M1 represented. They attempted to respond to it. The Gewehr 41, which came first, suffered from significant reliability problems in field conditions and was never produced in sufficient numbers to matter. The Gewehr 43, which replaced it, was better, but Germany managed to produce just over 400,000 Gewehr 43s in total before the war ended, against 4 million M1 Garands. The ratio there is 12 to 1. The Japanese response was, in a sense, the most direct acknowledgement of the M1's superiority. When Japanese military engineers were given access to captured M1 Garands, they did not conclude that the weapon was interesting or that its principles were worth studying. They concluded that they needed to produce one of their own. The result was the Type 4 rifle, a direct copy of the M1 Garand, modified to accept a 10-round integral magazine and chambered for the Japanese 7.7mm cartridge. That Japan needed to copy the weapon rather than design around it tells you something. The more telling figure, before the war ended, Japan managed to produce approximately 250 Type 4 rifles, 250, against 5.4 million of the weapon they were copying. The M1 Garand was in service in both theaters, European and Pacific, and in both cases the tactical asymmetry it created was documented in Prisoner, interrogations, post-war testimony, and the accounts of American infantrymen who understood, at the most practical level, what they had. The 8-round clip ejected with a metallic ring when empty, the famous ping that soldiers heard as the signal to reload. There is a persistent story in Popular telling that German and Japanese soldiers learned to wait for the ping as the moment to rush a position, knowing the American rifleman was empty. The ballistic evidence and most serious military historians discount this. The ping would have been difficult to distinguish in combat noise, and the reload time on the M1 was still faster than a bolt action cycle. But the fact that the story existed at all and was repeated says something about the awareness that the Garand created in the men who faced it. The weapon was declared obsolete after Korea and replaced by the M14. John Garand, who never received a patent royalty for his design, was awarded the Meritorious Civilian Service Award by the Army in 1941. He continued working at Springfield Armory until his retirement in 1953. The German Sergeant Schreiber, in the post-war account, said that after his first encounter with American infantry, he wrote to his family that he had never heard anything like it, that a man firing alone sounded like three, that there was no pause to aim at, no gap to move into. He had expected a cadence, he knew. What he got instead was a problem he had not been given the equipment to solve. Most of the soldiers who faced the M1 Garand at the other end of the barrel would have said something similar if they had the chance to say anything at all.